Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Startup Sense podcast. This is your host, Jonah Lupton. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have another great episode we'll get to in a second. First, I just want to remind you to subscribe to the Startup Sense podcast in iTunes or Google Play, and that way you never miss an episode. To today's show, okay, our guest is David Wind. He is the co-founder of a company called Peergrade. The website is peergrade.io if you want to follow along here. Company's actually based in Copenhagen, so that's where he's actually calling us from today. Sounds like a great city. Wish I was there, actually. And Peergrade has a really unique founding story, and we're going to let David tell that in a second. Company's raised about $300,000. They're about 10 people right now. And let's talk to David. How are you, man?
I'm good. And you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for joining us today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So you were just telling me in the pre-call, what the story behind the founding of this company was. Can you share that with us? Because it's pretty unique.
Yeah, sure. So I was doing a PhD at the Technical University of Denmark, and while I was doing that, I was teaching a course on machine learning. And well, that was going all well and fine with 20 students. And then I changed the title of the course to something with big data, and people just loved it, right? So I got 150 signups instead of my normal 20. For one of the semesters, and that was of course very exciting. But then you realize you have to give feedback to all these people, you have to grade all their papers, and then it starts dawning on you what you've done, right? And my solution to that problem was to start building Peergrade. So Peergrade was just a tool for myself, and the idea was that students would hand in their work to Peergrade, and then instead of me giving it feedback, each student would go and give feedback to 5 other people, and then this way, you could get grades from your fellow students. And because you had a lot of numbers, right? You had like 5 people grading your paper. You actually got very accurate grades. So this was simply a way for me to get out of grading in the beginning. But then other people latched onto it because they also saw a lot of learning potential by giving feedback to other people, by getting more feedback and these kind of things. And then slowly we kind of got more and more users and spun it out as an actual company.
Now, maybe you can give us a little bit more clarity on like what type of assignments are you referring to? Because, in my head, I'm thinking about all the ways that this could go right or wrong. And I'm thinking, the dumbest kid in the class, to put it bluntly, is trying to grade the paper or the assignment for the smartest kid in the class. And, the dumbest kid doesn't know what he's doing. So
Sure.
How
So
does it work?
when we talk about assignments, we talk about everything, right? It can be essays, it can be poems, it can be like mathematics papers. But one thing we found really important is that you make this kind of assessment rubric that the students use to grade, right? So in case you're doing mathematics or computer science things like I was doing, I would give them kind of some kind of answer sheets basically when they're doing this grading. So they could see, okay, am I getting it totally wrong here or totally right? But then in the end, you'd still get mistakes sometimes. And then the idea is just that when you get feedback you disagree with, then you flag it for moderation and the teacher comes and looks at it.
Now, so when you first started this was really just to help yourself with 150 students in the class, get the students involved with grading each other's work. And then some of the other teachers at the university saw what you were doing, liked it, and then they asked for access to this too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and it was really hacked, right? I thought, okay, this is a system for one person. Then the first guy asked, can I make it to a system for 2 people, right? I didn't generalize anything. And then I think when the 4th guy wanted to be on, I was like, okay, maybe I should just make this into like an actual product that you can sign up for. But it took a while before it actually became useful for multiple people.
Yeah. How much time passed between when you started using it and when you had 3 or 4 people using it to when you decided to turn this into a business?
Not long enough, I think. So one of the problems was that one of the guys asked how much it cost. And I was like, I don't know. And then I went to the director of my department and said, you know what, Rasmus, I've built this product and I want to use it in my own course, but I want to buy it with the faculty's money for myself, kind of. And he said, what does it cost? And I gave him like a price for a course. And I said like $700 a semester for a course. And he was like, that's fine. So I managed to sell a few licenses for myself through the university. It's kind of a bit convoluted, right? But then I had to make it, right? Because I already sold it. So that was, I think I started around summer, and then I had to get live in September because then my course was starting. So we managed to get up and running fairly quickly, but it's kind of like, building a ship while you're sailing. When we started Peergrade and launched it, there was only login. There was no handing in. There was no feedback giving. Everything wasn't there. So we just had one deadline at a time. So like, okay, when's the next hand-in coming? That's the date we need hand-ins to work. And then that happened. And then, okay, who's the first to give feedback? He needs to be able to give feedback. That's also when I brought on my co-founder and CTO, who's an extremely good programmer who could help me with getting this up and running.
So you really built like the ultimate minimal viable product then.
Yeah, we sold it and then we built it while we were using it. So, but it was really good. I could
for entrepreneurs out there. That's a nice way to get revenue.
Yeah, exactly. Like it was a great way for us to get revenue, show that there's actually a market. But also, we were sitting at uni every day, talking to students using it, talking to teachers using it. So we've been sitting at a university for the first year of our livelihood. So we know the teachers using the product very well, and we know the students very well, and we still teach the course today. My CTO is my teaching assistant, and yeah, we still try to use our product as much as we can.
So did you build the first product yourself? I mean, are you a technical engineering type person, or did you have someone else do it?
No, I'm a technical guy. So I built the first version of it, and then luckily other people took over, deleted all my code, and redid it. But I'm more of like a very back-end kind of guy. So I can build something that works, kind of, but it looks horrible.
Now, when did you guys decide to raise your first round of capital, the 300,000 that I referenced in the intro?
Yeah, I think we closed the deal a year after we launched, so that was September. Of course, those things also always take a lot longer than you expect. I don't remember when we started, probably a year ago today, I think, with the first conversations.
Now, who did you raise the money from? Is it investors here in the US, or is it investors from your area of the world in Copenhagen?
Yeah, so it's not a lot of US people. It's a good mix. So it's two groups. One of them is called Nordic Megas, and Nordic Megas is 10 business angels living in the Nordics. So they've built really big companies like Just Eat and Zendesk and Unity, and like really big companies these days. And there's the founders of those companies. So it's basically the 10 most successful Nordic business angels. So they put in some money, and then it's an accelerator in London called Emerge Education, which is like Europe's biggest edtech accelerator, I think. And they have a lot of knowledge about the edtech market. So we felt there was a pretty good mix of like knowledge about the market, but also a lot of knowledge about running a company successfully.
What is the startup scene like in Denmark or Copenhagen?
It's actually really amazing. So I think what's good about Copenhagen is that it's fairly small and very tight knit. So everybody in the startup scene knows each other, right? So if there's an event, you can expect everybody to come to it. Not like a niche, but everybody interested in startups will come to that event. And people are extremely friendly, and they help each other out a lot. So I have calls or talks every day with startup people from around Copenhagen needing advice on anything, and I take advice from many people as well. So it's very tight-knit, and it's very friendly, and people really help each other a lot.
So I'm looking up the population right now. So it says the municipal population is about 600,000 people, and then the urban population is about 1.3 million. So, and then the metro population is 2 million. So I assume that just, that must include more of the suburbs or whatever you guys call it over there, right?
That includes, if you take the 2 million, that's a lot, because the whole country is almost like 5, right? So that would be like fifth of Denmark.
Yeah, so probably 600,000. I mean, that's probably like the actual Copenhagen area. Yeah, so I mean, decent sized city then, and it looks beautiful. I mean, when you see it in pictures, I mean, just a lot of history over there.
We have some great photographers to take some good pictures here.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you guys don't get a lot of sunlight, right? Except in the summer.
In the summer, as soon as the first ray of sunlight hits the country, then everybody's outside immediately. They take off their shirts and just run around.
That must mean, but that's a good place to work then, because in the wintertime, there's nothing to do but be inside and put your head down and build something, right?
Yeah, and it's dark, right? It gets really dark very early. You get up, it's dark. You go home from work, it's dark. People get really depressed in the winter.
Oh, yeah. Okay, talk to us now about, so you built this product for your class, then you kind of expanded inside of your school. When did this thing start to grow to other universities?
Yeah, so the first new customer we got besides my own department was that I went to the University of Copenhagen, which is, of course, the biggest university in Denmark. And so I was teaching machine learning, right? Very technical. And everybody was saying, well, this is a kind of a cool product, David, but it only works for mathematics, right? There has to be a right answer. And I was like, I'm not sure that's true, but if it's true, I want to test it now. So I went to the humanities department at University of Copenhagen, and I said, you guys want to like buy some licenses for this weird product? I did like a pitch, no product. They never saw the product. They just got a pitch on some slides, and then they signed up for 10 courses. And these were courses in creative writing, where they write poems in Spanish grammar, in Japanese history, so like really weird stuff. And that was a really good test for us to see, first of all, does it even work when you're doing creative writing? Spoiler, it does, right? It works actually better, I think, than in mathematics. But also, how does non-techies interact with your product, right? They have all kinds of issues. So that's good to know. It's good to see that immediately and say, okay, this has to be simpler.
This is Jonah Lupton, founder of Joule and host of the Startup Sense podcast. At Joule, we help entrepreneurs and startup founders build, launch, and grow their companies by providing superior technology, marketing, and consulting services. We help clients of all sizes, budgets, and industries. We put our clients in the best position to raise capital, grow revenues, hire employees, and maximize their profits. For more information or to set up a free consultation with our team, please visit our website at joule.net. That's JOOL.net. How did you guys actually test it? Because I mean, that was one of my questions too, is if it's not, an A, B, or C answer, type of answer like multiple choice or true, false, if it is essays where it's more, there's no right answer, right? I mean, that's where it's the experience of the teacher that usually comes into play. But when you're dealing with students and peers, I can see where that gets a little, what's the right word? Fuzzy?
Yeah,
So
definitely. I think for that, there's two important parts of it, right? First is you need to do these evaluation criteria very well. Like you need to make some good ones for how do you evaluate a poem? What is a good poem, right? And that's a good exercise for the teacher to sit down and say, what is actually a good poem? What am I looking for? The other part about Peergrade that I think we realized a lot later is that it's not as much about getting feedback as actually giving the feedback. Like that's where the big learning perspective is. It's when you're giving other people feedback, you have to internalize what they're doing. Is that good or is that bad? You have to formulate it into constructive feedback. It's basically like teaching other people. And as many people know, teaching is the best way of learning.
Right.
So I think these days we think of Peergrade as many things. And the most important thing is a way for people to become teachers in their own course. And that works really well, especially for like the happiest user course we had. The course with the happiest users was the philosophy course, because philosophy students, they love arguing and they love talking and they love discussing, right? So they actually had a lot of success with Peergrade, even though it was pretty vague.
Yeah, that does make sense. I can see that where you're reading a paper from 5 other students, it really gives you a different perspective on the topic.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, when do you guys come to the U.S. or have you already come here?
I've been there a couple of times. We don't have any big customers in the US, but we've seen. So Peergrade used to be a paid only product. We had this on a 1 course license we sold, and then we realized that while that was all fun, we needed to get out there faster. And especially in higher education, people move extremely slowly. They'll say, "Oh, it sounds like a really great idea. I'm totally willing to try that in 1.5 years when I have my next course." And that's just a really long timeline for a startup. That's not even that old, right? So what we decided to do was to convert it into like a freemium product. So you can use it as a teacher for free. But then if you're as an institution, you want institutional features like integrations or better insights or these different institutional things, then there is an institutional license. And we released this free model around the 1st of January. And since then, we've seen a massive uptake in the US. So I think now at least 50, maybe more like 80% of our signups are coming from the US. And they're also coming primarily from high schools. So right now we're seeing a very different demographic than we anticipated originally coming into our courses. And that's really interesting for us.
Now, how are you guys, how are you spreading the word? What's been your branding or marketing message? And how are you finding potential customers?
Yeah, that's something we've been toying with a lot, right? Because it's always hard. We've been in the beginning, we just reached out to teachers manually, just like calling them. The only good thing about EdTech, there's many bad things to say, but the good thing is that all university teachers, they have to have their contact information on the websites, right? So it's like cataloged by name and department and their email, and there's pictures of them and everything, right? So that's very easy. Then later, I think we've had most success with the PR pieces that's been written about us, not by us, right? So we've been lucky to be featured in some really cool articles about like the 6 EdTech tools to try in 2017 and such. That's given us a lot of users. And then, of course, we have a presence on Twitter and Facebook. But since most of our users today are still free users, we can't afford to put in a massive amount of money in marketing.
Where's the $300,000 that you guys raised in capital? Where's that money mostly going into? Is that mostly development?
Yeah, 90% of our burn is salaries, right? And salaries and a lot of developers on the team. So of course, developers are eating our money, but rightfully so. They're good people, so very important.
And yeah, I mean, you need a great product before you can sell it.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially in the U.S. I mean, so have you guys built any web scrapers or web crawlers to go onto university websites and pull off contact info?
Yeah, I guess so. So we've done different things, right? We also do the very manual approach sometimes and say, okay, we want to go to Finland, right? Then hire somebody on Upwork and ask them to go to every university, find all departments, find 3 people from each department. It's much cheaper than building a scraper yourself almost.
Oh, for sure.
That's been one of our attack modes.
What's the success rate? Like, say you guys emailed, 100 different teachers or professors. What percentage of them would reply with some sort of interest?
So we've had very successful response rates, actually. In the beginning, we got almost 70% converted to actual meetings.
Wow.
And I think one of the reasons was that in the beginning, we did a little bit more hustle than we do now. So I would write to teachers and say, hey, I'm a PhD. I'm doing a PhD on peer feedback, and we also built this product during that, and I want to talk to you about how this could be relevant for your course. So like, I wasn't a CEO. I wasn't trying to sell them anything. I was just a PhD student that they feel familiar to that, right? Yeah, they also have a PhD student. And then when we talked to them and told them about Peergrade, they were all really excited about it. So we found that the less we tried to set it up front, the more success we had when we actually told them about the product. They would always convert to users.
What part were they the most excited about? Was it the idea that it could save them some time, or it just gets the students more involved, or what was it specifically?
I think that's the question we're still trying to tackle, right? What is our most important value proposition? Because we have a bunch. We have some teachers use it for saving time. I don't necessarily think that's always a great idea. You can't just like install Peergrade and then leave and go on vacation, right? Some teachers use it for getting more feedback to the students. Some teachers use it mainly for the giving feedback experience. And some teachers might even have a fourth kind of agenda with it. And I think we're trying to narrow it in, so it's probably not time saving that's our most important aspect. But some teachers only use it because of that, right? That's why they're here. So we need to figure out either to stick to one eventually, but maybe we just need to have 3 value propositions that you can pick and choose from.
Now, is it totally anonymous? Meaning, if you have a class of like 150 students, is it totally random which 5 people are grading your paper? And
yeah, so it's anonymous by default, right? So you don't know who you're grading or who's grading you. We strip metadata from the files and these kind of things. It's semi-random. So it's random who you're grading, but under different things, right? So we make sure that if there's a class with some really good students and some really bad students, we try to make sure that nobody gets graded by the 3 really poor students. So we try to automatically split people in a meaningful way so that everybody gets good feedback, basically.
Now, do the teachers have to do that splitting manual?
No, so we do that for them automatically. Of course, the first time you see a student, you have no knowledge of them, right? So we can't do much in the first round. But as soon as you've had one assignment, then the system becomes smarter and starts using that information. But so also during the feedback process.
That's the machine learning component, right?
Exactly. I got to use that PhD for something, right?
Exactly.
But also during the feedback process, when you're giving feedback to maybe 3 other peers, as soon as you've given feedback to the first one, we have some machine learning that goes in and looks at that feedback and kind of gives an estimate of how good it is.
Okay.
And that way we can make sure that we distribute people in the way so everybody gets at least one good feedback giver. And that's really cool. That's something that happens totally under the hood that the teachers never realize this, right? Which is a little bit sad because it's one of the coolest things. But it just means that the process works, and we have less teachers coming out and saying, "Oh, this was horrible. Like this guy didn't get any feedback." We don't see that anymore, and that's just important for our success rate on the teacher side.
Is this the future of education and teaching?
That's not a small ambition. I think there's Peergrade, and then there's like the bigger vision behind Peergrade. I think so. I think I've realized when I was implementing this in my own course that the way I scheduled my own course was that I took the subjects that I didn't know anything about that I really wanted to know, and then I made that the curriculum of my own course, and then I had basically 6 months to learn it, right? Because I had to teach it. Teaching is such a good way of learning, and we're not giving our students that option, right? We're just sitting them down on the bench, and then we're teaching and we're learning, and the students are just passively listening to us as teachers. So in the ideal course, I think everybody would be a teacher. And feedback and assessment is part of that, but why not let the students give the lectures? Why not let the students make the homework assignments or make the exam? I think there's so much learning by making questions and giving lectures that you should just have all students do that. And when they've done it, other people listen to that material or read it, and then they evaluate it. So you have this kind of totally peer-to-peer education, which I think would be extremely cool. That's one vision. We're moving towards it, but one step at a time, I think, is the best direction.
I mean, I started off college as a pre-med major, and I think one of the reasons I didn't do well or lost interest was because my classes were huge. So there was 200 to 300 people in each of the classes, and it was just the teacher on stage, literally lecturing for an hour, and then you'd go home and do the work. And there was no teacher-student interaction. There was no student. It was not a good way to learn the material, I guess. And
No.
this is 15 years ago, so I'm sure things have changed a little bit. But these are Peergrade and these types of new technologies and ways of learning, I think, is what is going to help some students. That otherwise, they don't like the conventional way of just sitting and listening to a lecture for an hour.
Yeah, I think that's also what we hear from some of our users, right? Some of the institutions coming onto Peergrade, they have these big lecture halls, and then students go to lectures all semester. And then in the end, they take an exam and they fail, and they did not anticipate that, right? They never got tested before the exam. They had no idea if they were doing good or bad. So now, and they didn't have the money to introduce written assignments in the middle of the course, because if you do that, you have to grade them, and grading costs a lot of money. So, and you can't have an assignment that nobody grades, right? You got to have somebody to look at it. But now with Peergrade, they can kind of cost-free introduce some kind of student engagement during the semester. Now students get to hand in something, they get to get some feedback, they get to look at other people's work, and they become more prepared for the exam, so they have lower dropout rates, right? So there's a big latent cost saving for the university in terms of just engaging students more and getting them through the uni.
Yeah, you're right. It's a good point. When you have 300 or 400 students in a class, the teacher or the professor is, they don't want to give, periodic tests or pop quizzes or, essays, because they create so much work for them. That means they're going to be up all night grading that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's one of our value propositions. Also, like in my course, there's a project that goes for 4 weeks, and then normally you would just get that project after 4 weeks and you would grade it. But I also get it after 2 weeks. They hand it in the middle of the project period, and then they give each other some feedback after 2 weeks, and then they go and improve it for the next 2 weeks, right? And that doesn't come at any cost for me. Like they hand in twice as many reports, but it's just free, right? So I think there's many new pedagogical possibilities that open up when you start introducing peer-to-peer feedback, which I think is super interesting.
Now that you guys have, so you raised 300,000, a lot of that's gone into salaries and product development. When do you guys raise more money to really scale this thing, across the globe, especially into the US, and really try to bump up that user base?
I think so. We've also been lucky to receive some actual love from the Danish government. So there's an innovation fund in Denmark that gives grants to companies, and we've been lucky enough to receive that twice. So we've actually been able to match our investments in public grants. That gives us a fair bit of runway, which is always extremely neat when you're building a complicated product. So when that's said, we also have revenue, of course, from some of our customers. We still need to raise money again. And I think either it's going to be just before the summer or in the fall. And we're especially looking towards the US this times for investment. I'm coming to San Francisco in May to meet some of the, especially the edtech investors over there are
Right.
really interested to us.
Yeah, I mean, I know a few of them, so feel free. I could always make some introductions for you. And I'm just wondering, like, what's the long term play for your company, right? Are you guys can you build a bigger, better company by remaining independent or being acquired by a large company that already has a ton of access to, all the universities around the world? I mean, have you thought about that?
It's a really good question. I think there's so many unknowns that I can't really say for sure. I think there's a possibility of Peergrade becoming huge enough by itself. There's this bigger vision of totally peer-to-peer education, which is definitely a really big vision. There's also the potential of an acquisition by, there's a number of players in this space. Right? You have publishers, you have learning management systems, you have all these people that could be potential acquirers. So I don't really know. And I think the good thing is that no matter what, we're building as a product that we really like and the teachers really like. And we're already way ahead of any competitor on the market very quickly. And we have much higher velocity. So it's not going to go completely wrong. You never know if yours is going to be totally successful, but this is kind of somewhat fail safe at this point, I think, which is nice to know.
What's been the most difficult thing since you guys started the company a couple of years ago?
Yeah, so we're all nerds, right? We're all engineers, and we have to build a company. We had to do our taxes, and we had to hire people, and we had to fire people, and we had to do all these things that are immensely tough and very vague, right? How do you this all culture thing? Everybody talking about culture, right? And what is culture? And we had to, all the practicalities around it. We just want to build products, but that's not how it goes. Raising money, I have all these books about raising money that I had to read to understand what's inside these VCs' heads, right? So we're doing our research. We're going through it in the reverse engineering way we can and trying to make everything into math. But in the end, that doesn't work. So it's just a lot of learning for us.
What in terms of hiring and firing, what are some of the good things that you guys did, and what were some of the mistakes that you guys made?
I think we have a very special culture in our company. We're all kind of introvert nerds, very quiet people. And we hired a lot of the same people as us. And in the beginning, I was very scared about that, but I think it's actually kind of neat that we're all very alike. There's nobody who's yelling, or we're very similar people, and we have a lot of fun together. I think one of the biggest mistakes we did wasn't we weren't very strict about our hiring process, and we are more strict now in terms of we would just hire people if we like them at the first screening call. And I think that's not a good idea, even if it's the right person. Like, you need some structure. You need to know, okay, we do 3 interviews and we do this and we ask these questions, and
Right.
we're better at that now. But we're just so anxious that they were going to take another job, right? So let's hire this guy immediately. So I think we're just learning that as we go. And everybody tells me all the right advice, and I never listen. Right? You never listen to advice until you realize it yourself, and you're like, of course, it's so obvious now.
What's the talent pool in Copenhagen like?
Non-Danish. No, so we have a lot of good people in Copenhagen, but not enough for the growing tech community here.
Okay.
So half of Peergrade, if not more, is not Danish people.
Gotcha.
But they live in Denmark, right? So we get people here. But we have people from the US, from Brazil, from Poland, from the UK. So we have a lot of people that we import talent, which is nice. But I think Denmark has a lot of really good people, but people in Denmark are a little bit afraid of risk, right? So they don't like this Silicon Valley craziness. They just kind of like to stick to their common, normal jobs.
Which leads into my next question was, if you guys raise the next round from U.S. investors, calling some VC firm out of San Francisco, would you then move the company to the U.S.?
That's a potential thing, yeah. We don't know yet. It's a lot of thought about the company, the employees, and everything. Can we move them all and make them happy? But there's always opportunities, and if a really good opportunity shows itself, then we might have to jump on it, right?
Right. I mean, we probably could both agree that the U.S. is probably the biggest market out there, right? Just in terms of universities and colleges and community colleges and high schools and up and down the education landscape. But I mean, as I've seen a lot of companies do, founders that have been on the show is, they start the company in Europe or the Middle East or wherever it might be, and that's where the technical team is based. And then, the executives, the founders, maybe the salespeople, they move to the U.S. So you kind of have a, distributed team at that point. Half, the development people are, for instance, in Copenhagen, and then you have the, everyone else in the U.S. maybe. But
yeah, we don't want to bring our developers over to the US. Then Google comes and snatch them all up immediately.
Yeah, no kidding. Right.
We can't afford that, right? We got to keep them here in the cold.
Google be like, okay, we'll pay you $250,000 a year, exactly. Which is crazy. I mean, that's how much, Silicon Valley startups, like it's hard to compete with Google and Facebook and Twitter. They're paying so much money for these engineers nowadays.
Yeah, it's also like in terms of funding, right? When we talk about our funding round of $300,000 in Denmark, that's a pretty neat seed round. But in the US, it's like a friends and family pre-seed round. Right. It's not even a real round, right? It's not even money.
It's it does seem like now you rarely see seed rounds in the US under $1 million.
Yeah, it's like that's a lot of money.
Yeah, it's a lot. Oh, a ton of money. What else do we need to know about the company that we haven't talked about yet?
I think we've been around the most important things. I think it's been a really good ride, and we had a talk today with somebody who was just saying, it's amazing how far you guys have gotten in so little time. We're all like, what? Like we're so slow. So I think like time is distorted when you're in the mess, right? You don't know if you're moving fast or slow, and in the startup world, everything is slow, right? So we feel like we're totally underperforming on execution, but everybody seems to be disagreeing with us. So that's just really, it's really hard to, once you're in there, you can't really, your perspective is so mangled.
Now, is your platform, is the product essentially where it needs to be in terms, like, for instance, if I introduced you to some, college professors here in the US, would you guys be able to give them what they need?
Yeah, I would say so. So it's that's also like you never have a really good answer to that question, right? Because if you really ask us, we would always say, no, we're not even getting close. But
right.
But we're out there, right? We have revenue, we have customers, we have a lot of teachers on the platform right now. They've got 10,000 active users right now.
Awesome.
So it's definitely useful in practice, right? We still have a lot of visions, and if you look at Peergrade now and Peergrade in 6 months, it's going to be massively better. But for now, it's still the best product on the market.
Last couple questions here is I'll throw this one out because it just popped into my head. What do the parents of the students say about this type of a, platform or grading platform where, they're paying to send their kids to college to get the best education possible. And then when they find out that other students are grading their kids' paper or test, have you heard any feedback? Like, I know it's kind of a random question, but
no, it's a very interesting question, right? So the first part of the story is that in Denmark, education is totally free, right? So
okay.
We got kind of, we didn't really think about this in the beginning because like everybody here is going to school for free, right? Also universities are all free. So, but then we started talking to people in the US, and we started talking to like MBA programs, right? Where they pay a lot of money to go to school. I think it's really important the teacher pitch it in the right way. They can't just go to the parents and tell them, well, I'm just not going to grade my students because that's really lame. So they're going to grade each other. You have to remember that it's actually about improving the education, right, and making the kids smarter. And we encourage teachers to also give feedback to their students at the same time to kind of moderate the process very thoroughly. But what we found about MBA programs is that that's actually some of the best clients for us. Because if you're in a high school class, your peers might be pretty random, right? But if you're in a class at a business school, then your peers in your class are going to be extremely clever people. They're going to be marketing people in big companies. And these people have a lot of knowledge, right? So you want to share knowledge more in an MBA class. So we're seeing a lot of interest these days from the big business schools in the world, which is super interesting for us.
Have you guys, I mean, maybe this isn't relevant in Denmark, but maybe in the US it would be some sort of a influencer or affiliate program where someone with a lot of connections to teachers or universities could help you expand rapidly and get those quality introductions? I mean, I'm just kind of thinking on the fly here. I don't know if that would work or not.
Sure. Like we're making the technicalities of that work right now because we can see that almost all of our users are either coming from these blog posts that we haven't written or from introductions teacher to teacher, right? A lot of the people who sign up for our product say, oh, that's actually really cool. I liked it. I'm going to go and teach this other school how to use it next week.
Right.
That's just amazing for us, right? And we need to figure out the right way to kind of leverage these influencers and also maybe give them a bit of the upside in case they're doing really good work for us, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So that's something we're working on, the practicalities of.
And I would think once you get into a school and one teacher starts using it, I would assume that they tell other teachers, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so that virality is probably huge. So you just got to get into a school, and then once you get in, I can see where it starts to spread across the faculty. So, well, David, that's pretty much all I got for you, man. Really want to thank you for calling in today. What time is it right now in Copenhagen?
It's 6:45 p.m. So it's just about dinner time.
Yeah, so you're 6 hours ahead of us. So,
yeah.
Well, get to. Hope you have some good dinner planned. Dude, thank you so much for being a guest. Like I said, once you guys kind of start expanding more in the U.S., maybe raise that next round of capital, probably Series A. We'd love to have you come back on the show and tell us about it.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
You got it, man. Talk to you soon, David. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.